Remember that Figma AI that just announced, the one that would automatically design for you? Well, they already pulled it because another designer showcased just how questionable the work it does is. We should talk about this because I had weird expectations for this product, but man, the fact that it's already a disaster is weird and kind of exciting to me, especially when you see who found this, because they're one of my favorite designers. So this is from TechCrunch. Figma disables its AI design features that appeared to be ripping off the Apple Weather app. More than appeared. It was pretty bad. We'll see what I mean in a second. Figma CEO Dylan Field says the company will be temporarily disabling its Make Design AI feature that was said to be ripping off the designs of Apple's own weather app. The problem was first spotted by Andy Allen, the founder of Not Boring Software, which makes suites of apps that include popular things like the Skinnable Weather app and other utilities. That's not giving Not Boring enough credit. We'll go here in a second because I love Andy so much. But first, we need to showcase what we're talking about here, which is this particular tweet. So he asked Figma to design a not boring weather app, because that's his whole brand is not boring. So make design not boring weather app. Submitting. Now Figma's AI is designing a not boring weather app. That looks pretty boring to me, but also pretty familiar. When you keep scrolling, you'll see once he picks a color palette, it's like, oh, yeah, that's pretty familiar looking actually. And then he kept asking, and he was able to get it to basically generate one for one the Apple Weather app. So on the left here is Apple Weather, and on the right here are the things that he got it to generate. These are the same. So it seems like they trained on literally Apple's UI, which is kind of concerning and potentially problematic. As Andy said here, this is a weather app using the new Make Designs feature, and the results are basically the Apple Weather app. He tried 3 separate times and got the same result every time. That's insane. The fact that it's basically just generating an existing app each time, even like the order that things appear in, that's more than eerie. And while people are saying in chat that all weather apps look the same, kind of, they don't look the same. Like, this is identical. The UI for showing what the temperature is throughout the day, the air quality filter with the exact same coloring on all of them, the severe weather alert that is in the same section on all of them, the wind, which looks exactly the same. I think it's even the same icon. Yeah, it is. It's literally the same icon for wind. Like, that's not just these look similar. These are all the same. So that's not good. And it makes sense that they would pull it as they figure out how bad this is. Really quick, though, just to show a weather app that doesn't look at all like this. The not boring weather app does not look at all like this. Also, that homepage, you can already tell going in that this is not going to be boring at all. So we go to apps, weather. Yeah, that looks just like Apple Weather, right? Basically the same app. No difference here at all. It's beautiful. All of his stuff is just stunning. He's found this weird hybrid of like the old skeuomorphism that things like iOS had, where your pages looked like real paper and stuff, where it feels very real and tangible. And all of his stuff is a nice like 3D blend of things, but it's still very fun and goofy and just good. All of his apps are some of the most stunning things I've ever seen, and they broke my brain for like what good design is. The calculator is just like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. So check out Not Boring if you want some more examples of good designs like this, notboring.software. Back to the story though. The Make Design feature is available within Figma software, and it will generate UI, layouts, and components from text prompts. Just describe what you need, and the feature will provide you with a first draft. That's how the company explained it when the feature launched. You know what we're going to do? We're going to try this on V0, which is Vercel, who is a channel sponsor, not on this channel, my other YouTube channel. They have a UI generator that spits out source code for you to use in React. I know they've trained on a wide set of data that, as far as I know, they have more than the rights to. So this should be a very interesting comparison. Not boring weather app. Make it work well on mobile. And look at that. It generated something that looks entirely different. Might not be great, but it looks entirely different. So I do think what we're seeing here is a problem specific to Figma's data set and its AI implementation. I don't have any other good AI UI things to test, but it seems like the training data here is very specific. The idea is that developers could use this feature to help get their ideas down quickly to begin exploring different design directions and then arrive at a solution faster, according to Figma. Interesting that Figma supposedly specified to developers, not designers, but makes sense. This feature was introduced at Figma's Config conference last week, where the company explained that it was not trained on Figma content, community files, or app designs, as Dylan Field said in his response on X. In other words, the accusations around data training in this tweet are false. This is the CEO's response to what Andy shared. As we shared at Config last week, as well as on our blog, our websites, and many other touchpoints, the Make Design feature is not trained on Figma content, community files, or app designs. So the accusations around the training data in this tweet are false. I don't know. What else would this be trained on? I want to hear what you have to say, Dylan. So how does it work then? As we have explained publicly, the feature uses off-the-shelf large language models combined with design systems that we commissioned to be used by these models. The problem with this approach, which I outlined in my keynote last week, is that the variability is too low. That's an important point. So if they decided to pay designers to make a bunch of designs for them to train on, they have way less data, which means they're going to get a smaller variety. If we again compare this to V0, I'm going to go do the same prompt again. Not boring weather app. And my bet is that this time we're going to get very different options because they're trained on a lot of different data. Look at that. It's literally entirely different with the exact same prompt as we had done earlier. Where in this one, they're all really colorful. And then in this one, it just so happened that they're all black and white, even though the prompt was exactly the same, because the amount of data this model has is much wider. So the variety in what it generates is also much larger. But since they aren't using data that already exists, they're making their own, they don't have as wide a variety, which means you're going to get similar results every time. The other important piece here is that if they commissioned people to go design things really quickly, they might be the ones doing the knockoff instead. They might be like, okay, we need more sample apps. So pull up your iPhone, scroll through, go to each app, and then redesign that app in order to make it into testing data. So yes, the statement of this isn't trained on app data, the same way that Andy applied here, that Figma looks heavily trained on existing apps. Technically, it's not. If a human redesigned the app and then they trained on that instead. But that feels like a weird catch because you don't need AI to rip off someone's design. You can just rip off their design. If an AI is being trained on an already ripped off design, that's just a transitive property thing. Like I might not be ripping off Apple directly, but if I buy something from someone who ripped off Apple, I am still ripping off Apple. That is how that works. So that might be the disconnect here, but I want to keep reading. Within hours of seeing the tweet, we identified the issue, which was related to the underlying design systems that were created. Ultimately, it's my fault for not insisting on a better QA process for this work and pushing our team hard to hit the deadline for config. I've asked our team to temporarily disable the Make Design features until we are confident that we can stand behind its output. The feature will be disabled when our US-based team wakes up in a few hours, and we'll re-enable it when we've completed a full QA pass on the underlying design system. As I discussed at Config, we believe that craft is your competitive advantage, and it's more important than ever to create unique designs. Crazy that you commissioned a bunch of designs that aren't unique, but to each their own. We live in a world where any off-the-shelf LLM can help you go from prompt to software in one shot. Designers will need new tools to explore the option space of possibilities, and we intend to build these tools. My belief is that if we build these tools the right way, the designers will be able to have more creative expression, not less. I hate missing the mark, especially on something that I believe is so fundamentally important to the future of design. More soon. Overall, solid response. My one hesitation is, again, that lack of acknowledgement that the designs they commissioned could themselves be ripping off other people's work. There's no way you could commission somebody to make a bunch of quick designs and not have it be somewhat derivative of other work, even their own work. So that's the one concern I don't feel like was addressed meaningfully here. But otherwise, it is awesome to see a CEO like this not hiding this happening, but quote tweeting the actual tweet that blew this up, owning it, taking things down, and working with the community to do this right. That one detail shouldn't be enough to say this response is bad. So overall, Dylan, doing good. Mirroring complaints at other industries, some designers immediately argued that Figma's AI tools, like Make Design, would wipe out jobs by bringing digital design to the mass market, while others countered that AI would simply help to eliminate a lot of the repetitive work that went into design, allowing more interesting ideas to emerge. Yep. Just a heads up to any designers using the new Make Design, you may want to thoroughly check existing apps or modify the results heavily so that you don't unknowingly land yourself in legal trouble. This is an important point too. This is an app that exists. It's unique. It's got fancy stuff going on inside of it. Now, Figma needs to train their AI on something. So they want a bunch of small apps that they can train on. So these are all apps that they paid some designer to design. So I'll say this is app A. We'll say this is app B, and we'll say that this app C is actually a clone of unique app. Like they took some inspiration and in that inspiration made something that looks way too much like unique app. You know what? We'll color these accordingly because we all know unique apps are blue every time. If your app isn't blue, it's not really unique, is it? So we have this unique app, and now this is the data that Figma is using to train. So Figma uses all of this data and it says, hey, AI, reference this. So here's all of the things it knows about. So now if we ask it, like, make an app like A, it's going to start making our app. And now it's going to say to the model, hey, we need an app that is quality A. Maybe we'll change so that they're colored. We'll say app A is green and app B is red. So we'll say make a red app. We go to the model. It says, hey, AI, we want a red app. So it goes through what it knows based on the apps that it has. And each of these apps that it has for training data has a bunch of info about it. So they tag like, this app is red, it does this. This app is green, it does this. This app's unique and blue, it does this. So we go to the model, we say, hey, we want a red app. And now it realizes this app is the reddest red app. So it uses that as the starting point to make the app that you have. But what if we say, not make a red app, but make a unique app? Now it's going to use this data to train it. And we're going to end up with a very unique app, like the one that we designed earlier. The problem here is that even though we got it from this box that appears to be safe, the fact that some of the data in this box is a clone of an existing unique app that they were inspired by. Even if using it for this purpose is legal and not releasing this app is legal because you're just copying it to train data, that might be fine. But as soon as you then export it out somewhere else, that's when the legality gets questionable. Imagine that you're, the Duolingo. So you're making a bunch of things that people are translating. You take a book that's copywritten and you take sentences from that book and give them as prompts inside of Duolingo for people to translate. In and of itself, that use case is almost certainly fair use to take a sentence from a book and then use it inside of your app. But if somebody was to then take that sentence from that app and then use it in their own book, then it gets questionable. Even though they're copying from an app, which is legal by itself, and the app's copying from the book, which is legal by itself, just through that pipe of it going from here to the model, then out, now you're at risk. And that's a real concern that designers can and should have. Because we have seen some bullshit lawsuits, especially when you get into the art world where things are so much more subjective. Like, there are lots of musicians, some of which I don't even like Robin Thicke, who have had bullshit lawsuits because a few notes in a melody were the same, even though the songs didn't sound at all like objectively similar. Like, they just were not the same at all. The fact that art and art experience is so subjective meant that they could convince a jury that these are ripping each other off. And that's absurd. So that's a real risk. And with this obfuscated layer in the middle, which, by the way, something that we didn't cover that's important, this section in the middle here, we don't know shit. That's a black box. We don't actually see what's going on behind the scenes here. So we don't know which apps they designed things based on and what data they're training on. That's all hidden from us. We don't see any of that. So this is just blocked out. So now you're potentially at risk. And that's really, really scary. Yeah, as I said, they commissioned the systems for the models, but that doesn't necessarily solve the problem here. I overall like the response, but I don't think it properly addresses the risk here. As soon as your designs are coming from a black box like that you don't know what is in there and how it got there, there is risk there. And we should definitely acknowledge that risk. Let me know what you think in the comments. I know this is the usual thing, but it's an important conversation to have, and I want to make sure we had it right. Until next time, peace, nerds.